Hello and welcome back to the Silver Lined Relaunch. And this is gonna be a good one. I've got Natalie Ledwell with me, and probably you have heard her name. And if you don't know exactly why, you are going to soon find out that this is someone that you definitely want to be following because she's got so much goodness to share. And I've had the privilege of being on her podcast. And I remember when I first saw her when we were doing this, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have been watching your Mind movies for years and years, and here I get to interview you, talk to you, find out what has been impactful to you and your relaunches. This episode is brought to you by the Fired Up Entrepreneur Program. And this is a program that we are so proud of. The results have been downright remarkable, and we want to invite you to get a glimpse of what it is like inside this program by inviting you to participate in the Business Boot Camp, which is a 5-day free event. And get involved with this because the pearls that we're going to be sharing each and every day are going to be the foundation for allowing you to make money, keep the money, grow the money, and strengthen not only your business, but also yourself. So please take advantage of this and join us at our next boot camp. You're listening to the Silver Lined Relaunch, and I'm your host, Hillary DeCesar, award-winning entrepreneur and transitional coach. Each week, I'll invite you to tune into inspirational stories, revealing how you too can turn ordinary experiences into the extraordinary. Feeling stuck? I'll share step-by-step strategies to fuel your ability to experience a life where silver linings are both abundant and possible. Hello and welcome back to the Silver Lined Relaunch. And this is gonna be a good one. I've got Natalie Ledwell with me, and probably you have heard her name. And if you don't know exactly why, you are going to soon find out that this is someone that you definitely want to be following because she's got so much goodness to share. And I've had the privilege of being on her podcast. And I remember when I first saw her when we were doing this, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have been watching your Mind movies for years and years, and here I get to interview you, talk to you, find out what has been impactful to you and your relaunches. So, Natalie, welcome to the Silver Lined Relaunch Show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
And so I always like to jump in and really turn it over to you to share where you are now and what has been that very significant relaunch that has shaped who you are right now.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because I've had so many lives in this lifetime.
Isn't that the truth? So many different relaunches. Which one do I choose?
Exactly. It's like my whole life has been a relaunch. You know, I my first career was in fitness, and then when I met my husband, we owned a nightclub, and then we got into Mind movies and a whole bunch of things. So I think the most significant relaunch for me personally was definitely the end of my marriage. And it was very interesting. As Hillary was just saying, she's been a guest on my podcast, and my podcast is called Not Over, Just Different, which is the phrase that I coined when my husband and I separated. So we had been married for 20 years. And the really interesting thing was that when you looked at our lives, we had this incredible wild adventure of a life. You know, we're Australians, so we've traveled all over the world. We've been on safari in Africa and, running with the bulls and, carnival in Rio and, all of the fun things that you can do. And we had this amazing company. We have this amazing company called My Movies, where we're really feeling like we're doing what we feel passionate about. I'm the teacher of the and the face of the company, so I get to really be working and coaching with people one-on-one, which absolutely fills my heart. Glenn is a marketing genius, so he gets to do what he loves as well. And so, when you looked at our lives, everything was amazing. We were living here in the US. We had tons of friends. We were traveling, successful business, but our relationship was crumbling. And I remember feeling, especially for the last 2 years of my marriage, is feeling so desperately unhappy. But I didn't want to let on to anyone else that that's what the case was. And so, my coping mechanism that I picked up when I was a kid was that, I would just shut down emotionally and put up a facade like everything was okay. And to a certain extent, Glenn would do the same things, which is probably why we lasted as long as we did. But we started to drift apart, and I think for me, I actually started to change. When I stepped into this role of teaching, law of attraction and personal development, I, as a transformational leader, for me, I think my own development is very, very important. And so as I'm doing all this work myself, I'm starting to change and wanting different things. And so
Isn't this interesting? Before you continue,
yeah,
it is so fascinating being a transformational leader and really leaning into learning as much as you can about, the mindset and the space and law of abundance and attraction, and you do become this sponge for all this information. And then you start to want to have, even more and expand and growth, which is, a primary need of all of us. Yet 20 years you were married, from the outside, it looked perfect.
yeah,
From the inside, it was nothing but that.
that's right.
And as you're saying this, Natalie, I have to say, I lived in a kind of that dual world environment as well with my first husband, where on the outside, man, it looked great. Power couple, rocket ships, doing all this, but it really, underneath the surface, it wasn't that. And, you can only go for so long before it starts to break, before the foundation starts to really crack and you can't keep patching it up. But I know, given I've been through it, I know how difficult it is when it all does come. And even though we build into it, we build up to it, it's still that crashing down of the union.
Yeah.
And so how did you put what you were teaching to use? I mean, how did you start to say, God, I got to do this on myself?
Well, it's so interesting because I wasn't happy, but then you go through all these little mental loops where you go, well, I should be happy. Look, I have more than most other people, and it wasn't like we were fighting, and it wasn't like we hated each other and that we were like that. It was just that we were so becoming more and more distant. And I think, especially the last couple of years, I think, I don't care is what I would say most, because it's like, I just don't care. I'm just defeated. I'm over this. And we did talk about it, but Glenn's like, no, this is not what I want. I'm like, all right, it is, but you'll finally get there. And so when we finally did end, Glenn had met somebody else. And to be honest with you, I was just so relieved. I was like, oh my God, this is so good. I'm like, first of all, he has someone to look after him. I don't need to worry about him. He's going to be fine. And so the interesting thing for us is that when I look at, what we teach and the paradigms and everything that we follow, I was applying a lot of that, because for me and for both of us, even in the moment, we kind of just acknowledged, okay, we drifted apart. And I didn't blame him for looking outside the marriage, because, we weren't close, we weren't intimate for quite some time. And I was just happy that he was going to be happy. And we made a commitment to each other, even in that moment, in that conversation, that was a shock in the moment, but it wasn't a shock overall, was that we're still going to navigate through this with compassion and kindness and respect for each other, which is what we were able to do. And I said, and at all costs, we keep the business. I said, because what we're doing is too important. It's bigger than us. It's something that we really need to continue. So we were able to do that. And we really.
Ooh, so I don't know if you know this. I'm actually writing the book, The Great Divorce.
Mm,
And in that book, there are going to be people who truly were able to navigate through, come out the other side, and we're going to hear shortly what's transpired since then. But hey, Natalie, you've got a chapter now in my next book. I love that. But I know we're laughing now, and there is a lot of sorrow. There's a lot of heaviness that comes with this. Your Glenn ended up finding somebody, as you said, hey, you hadn't been intimate, you hadn't, it was normal. It was, you want him to be happy. But was there a sting there? Was there like, but wait a second, what about me? Where am I going to be? Or how did you deal with that?
Well, there was a couple of things that were really showing up, especially in that last year. Number one, I kept having this voice telling me that I was wasting time. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, what do you mean by that? And I soon realized after we'd separated that it meant that I needed to step into a bigger game. And we can talk about that in just a moment, and what that game is for me. The other thing was that I knew that I wasn't putting any effort into saving the marriage. So when we did eventually split up, my first question was, what was my role? Like, how did I show up in this? Why did I show up the way that I did? Why was I getting triggered? Why was I being, indifferent? Why did I have these kind of behaviors come up, so that I don't do that again? So, I mean, I think while I was in the marriage, all I did was blame Glenn for everything. It was his fault for everything that was going on. But of course, as soon as I lost my scapegoat, I was like, damn, well, if I don't step up. And the thing is, and I've got to be really honest, I was using my marriage as an excuse not to step up. I was hiding. My story was, Glenn has to be the man. He has to be like, I can't outshine him. What a crock of crap. It was just a stupid excuse that I was making up because I was afraid to step into what that next big step was going to be. So I had to really get honest with myself about that.
So if he's listening to this, he's smiling. He's like, yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't all my fault. It wasn't. It truly is. For every ending in a marriage, there's always two sides, two roles that were played. But I appreciate you saying about this, stepping into the next step, and that there is this, it's trepidation a lot of times. Like, it's the fear of what's to come. It's the fear of like, oh my gosh, fear of too much success, fear of failure, right? Both sides of it. But for you, when you finally were like, you heard the voice and you said, yeah, I'm listening, I'm not going to tune it out anymore, then things started to truly happen for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you share what started to happen?
Yeah. So the first thing that kind of came through is, was a voice saying, look, create mind movies for kids. I'm like,
okay. But for those that don't know what mind movies, let's talk a little bit more about what those mind movies are. And
right.
Explain how many you have, which is extraordinary.
Yeah. So a mind movie is basically a visualization tool. So it's like a vision board, but it's the movie version of a vision board. So, at My Movies, we've created software to make it really simple for people to create their own movies, which is really a depiction of the life they want to create for themselves. So it's a combination of affirmations and photos that match those affirmations, and then music, which becomes the soundtrack or the theme song for the incredible future that you're creating. So when you watch,
okay, everyone, how cool is this? I mean, you've always heard me say, I don't like these dream boards. I don't like, vision boards. I think that, it's just a bunch of nonsense. I'm a big believer in Believe It boards. And you take Believe It boards and then you add this movie aspect, movie of the mind, which I love so much. And how many of these do you now have that you have, that people have done? And that
we've reached about 6 million people so far.
Yeah.
With Mind Movies. And, we're, like I said, I created like the children's version, which, had age appropriate photos and age appropriate, affirmations and categories and things in there. And then I created it and I'm like, okay, well, now what? Like, now what do I do? And then through a series of random events, I got connected with the Dean of a university in Medellin in Colombia, who we did a commitment to donating 10,000 accounts to work with underprivileged children there in Medellin in Colombia. And he said, "Can you also create a little curriculum to go with it?" And of course, I'm like, yes, thinking I don't know how to do that, but like this is presenting, and I have to take the reins. So I created a small curriculum, which we had going in Colombia and Australia and New Zealand and a couple of other countries. And then everyone's like, "Well, what happens after the 12 lessons?" I'm like, "I don't know." I was like lucky to get this created. And then a colleague of mine who has got 2 master's degrees in child psychology and has worked with kids in refugee camps around the world. She reached out to me and said, "Let's do this together." And so from there, we've created this K-12 behemoth of a curriculum. There's like 20 lessons for each age. We have schools here in the US teaching it. We're just about to start in Australia with this new curriculum. And it really is social emotional learning. It's not law of attraction. It's not personal development in the woo-woo sense, but it's definitely a lot of psychology, a lot of science. And so we're starting to make a difference with children around the world now, which is incredible. And the funny thing about it is, it's like, I don't have children. I left school when I was 15, so I left quite young because I'm from a big family. And I'm probably one of the most unlikely people to run with a project like this. And in the beginning, I was the bottleneck to this being launched, because I had all of these self-doubts that I was struggling with. Who do I think I am? I'm not smart enough to do this. I don't have the credentials to do this. And it seemed such a huge, big thing, but my own self-talk was kind of keeping me in a holding pattern. And so
and you didn't have children. So you're like, I'm creating all of this okay. So how did you get past the self-talk?
Well, so what I did is I really owned my part in this project. So, my colleague Debbie, she's the one with the master's degree. She's kind of created the curriculum, but my gift is to be able to take her information, put it into teachable lessons, create all the digital assets for it. Like, we've built the platform, we've put all the student workbooks and everything together. So I brought all of that to the table, and I'm the big picture person. So, and I realized that I'm also the type of person, because of the manifestation skills that I have, to be able to draw the right people to the project to really help this fly. So, really owning my power, owning my gifts, rather than going, who do you think you are? I'm a kid from a family of 8 kids in a country town in Australia. Like, so you're like, okay, but I think it's, number one, believing in myself. Number 2, owning my own gifts and my own power, and really shining when it comes to the project.
Okay, so I'm often called the midlife manifestation mama. All right, I'm willing to share that with you, because that's how good what you've been doing. And I had a former company was keeping kids safe, security company for kids online. And I mean, you talk about what you're creating, what you're doing, and how everything has progressed from kind of that point where you're like, you know what, I need to lean in to what I'm ultimately supposed to be doing. Now, one thing that you did not share, but I know this about you, is that your ex-husband, you still are in business with him.
Yes. Yeah. So
that's for some, they'd say, like, how is that even possible? And so can you help those that are out there thinking, I want to be this person. I want to be able to have, this relationship with my ex. How did you do it?
So Glenn and I were serial entrepreneurs. So we've owned about 20 different businesses together. And so with all of that different experience, what we know to be true about how we work best together is, number one, we have separate departments. So, marketing is his baby, teaching is my baby. We don't tell each other how to do our jobs. We trust and know and respect each other enough to know that we can stay in our lane and do a really good job of what we're doing. And we're exceptionally fortunate that we're an online business. So, Glenn's in Vegas. I'm in Vegas sometimes. I'm here in LA. So we're sort of, in different areas. So we can work remotely, not even be in the same city and still be working together in the same company. So, you know,
So even though the remote, when you both stayed in your lane, as you said, is there like, because I'm sure that people are like, okay, wait a second. This initially, when we heard you owned a company and then you got divorced, most people would think the business would have to also separate. It would have to go to one. And you really decided that you could, business partner wise, you could delineate between marriage
mhm.
and business.
Yes.
But yet he's got a girlfriend or, something, was going on there. And were you single at the beginning? Were you starting to date somebody? I mean, tell us what was going on there.
Yeah, so the girl that he was in love with when we first broke up, they were together for a number of months. He's engaged now to this really, really lovely girl, who I love. The thing is, I've always wanted happiness for him, and for Glenn, he, and I think for most men, they're not normally single for very long. They like to have a partner, and especially for Glenn, he likes to have a partner in his life, and they travel the world together and do amazing things, which is awesome. That's the life that I used to have with him, but I don't want to do that anymore because my focus is on changing the world, and I can't do that when I'm always on a plane. So that was one of those things. But for me, what was most important to me was working on myself,
Hmm.
because I remember the first week after we'd split, and I would go for a walk every morning. I was in San Diego, and I'd be walking on the water, and my mind was swimming, and I'm just like, I don't even know who I am without him. We've been together for 20 years now, nightclubs, like we were that couple that everyone hung out with, that everyone wanted to be with, and I was just like, I don't know who I am without him.
Mm.
And then I got to maybe 4 or 5 days in, and I was listening to a book when I was walking by Michael Singer called The Untethered Soul. And there was the passage that finally came through that said, this is just a moment in time. And it's one of
Mm.
millions of moments that you're going to be having, and even though you may not be able to control the events of what's happening in this moment, what you can control, and I'm paraphrasing obviously, is how you allow it to affect it, how long you allow it to affect you, and how you choose to respond to it. And then I'm like, I've listened to it, I'm like, yeah, right. And then I'm like, hold on a minute. Then my question shifted from not to, who am I without him, to, well, who do I want to be? Oh my God. I had this amazing opportunity right now. I have a successful business. I have a platform. I don't have to worry about finances. I have still got the, relationship with him, which is great. But now I get to really step into who I am. And I remember, I did the Hoffman process not long after we split up, and some other courses. And I was doing an interview with Panache, the site. And I said, it's Nat 2.0. Like, I feel like I'm this whole new person. And he said, no, no. He said, you're original Nat. And I realized
Ah.
I'd gone back to, and I was 25, when Glenn and I met. So, it was, when you're young like that, you kind of morph to be with the person that you're with. And I had lost a lot of my identity. But what I was doing is kind of shedding, I remember like the first 6 months of, you're like, wait a minute, I'd say something, go, is that me or is that Glenn? Like, what do I really think about this? Like, I really had to, like, undo a lot of that.
This is, I got to tell you, I'm just listening to you and I'm smiling because I went through the same thing where, all of a sudden the first week, I remember my ex had the kids. So I have 3 kids. So they were gone and the house was quiet. And I'm like, I hated it. I'm like, the quietness was just like, it was like I was at a concert and the decibels were going. It was the exact opposite of what it should have been. It was awkward. It was uncomfortable. I remember going to a chair and I just sat down and I burst into tears. And then I sat there for about 30 minutes and nothing happened. Like there was nobody coming around. It was just me in this house. And I remember looking around the room and I'm like, all right, well, this isn't getting me anywhere. So, all right, get up, get yourself out of this chair. So I walked into the kitchen and I just stood there and there wasn't anything that I needed to cook for anybody because it was just me. And I had this whole week long also where I was unclear of who I was, unclear of what I was supposed to do. I felt like, I was the Mrs. without the Mister. I was the, hold on. My identity has been tied up in this couple, and now it's just Hillary. And I remember a friend reached out and said, there's a dinner party, and you can, why don't you come and bring somebody? And I remember like, well, I would love to come, but I don't know anybody to bring. So can I still come? I mean, it's a weird state, right? As you're going into this new identity. And I love when you start to say that, this is the new norm, but it wasn't. It was who you were all along. You were just finding yourself again. That's so great, Natalie. I mean, really profound, and you've summarized it so well, because that's what really ends up happening. And whose story is it? Is it yours? Is it theirs? And then more importantly, which one do you want it to be?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that when you can get into that place, and, of course, I'm like very sad at the beginning of the week, but then the end of the week, I'm so excited. I am so excited. I'm like, of the possibilities. And I think for me, the big thing was the freedom too. Like I had all this freedom to say, think, do, but even in saying that, I did realize in time that all of those parameters, all of those, things that I had put on myself and all those stories that I was telling, none of them were true. They were just made up in my mind, because I was looking through the lens of, my deep core wounding, my limiting beliefs, and all of those things. And so, once I kind of realized, well, that was just me, because you think about it, I'm stepping into this whole new space of education. Glenn's supporting me 1,000% of the time. Like we're doing this together as the company, and he couldn't be more proud, of what I've accomplished, and the same with me, with him. He's really expanding and doing a lot of his own stuff as well. And it's just, we're really getting to shine, and we're still getting to share that with each other, which is really cool.
And you did mention that you sometimes take vacations together.
Yeah. We
That's and for people who know me, they know, Hillary and Leonie and Mick. I mean, we do. We celebrate holidays together. We have gone away for the weekend together. I mean, it's unusually awesome.
Yes.
It's just like it's feels so much better than the alternative of, that hate, the blame, I don't ever want to be with that person, to turn it around and just be like, you know what? There was a point that I actually really did care for you. I really did love you. And yeah, it's still there. And there's parts of that are still there. And yet we can still have our own separate lives. It's pretty amazing, right?
It's so amazing. And the thing is that, with Glenn and I, like, it's been now 8 years since we separated, and I'm now in a newish relationship. We've been together about 9 months, so it's not that new, but yeah, so
it's still kind of new. That's still come on. That's still fun. And like, you guys haven't really, because COVID, been able to truly like get out there and explore and vacation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but yeah, life has not been normal, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, and I'm saying to Bert, my new guy, I'm like, so, when life gets back to normal. But it's interesting. So now there's this whole new set of things of going into this new relaunch of a relationship. I had a very full life as a single woman. And
you were single for how long?
I had 8 years. I had one relationship in that time that went for, but for me, it was just like, I just like being free. I would say, look, I want like a relationship. But if you looked at my calendar,
you weren't open to it.
Where are you going to fit that in?
Yeah. Well, I was also single 8 years. I did have relationships and I was like I guess I'm one of those, types of like relationship people. I have to have, but then there was a moment where I really just took a step back, and it was after I had ended a relationship with a guy 11 times and kept getting back together. And I'm like, I need to do a little more work on myself. And then as soon as I really did that, I met E, and we got married a couple of years later, and we've been together now almost 6 years. But I trust me, this is all good. In due time, it will happen. But you do have to be ready. You have to make time for it. You have to have the space,
Yep,
not only in your mind, but also in your environment, right? Because it's
absolutely.
whatever's on
Yeah.
the outside's reflecting on the inside, outside. It's all that. So, very, very, very amazing what you've done. And I would like to ask you in the rapid fire questions that I love to do.
Mhm.
When you're putting together your mind movie right now, and you're directing this, and you're creating, what does it look like?
So the one for this year is really focusing on the program. It's called Personal Growth Studies. And in my mind movie for that particular project, I talk about how we're reaching children around the world. Because we're also working in Africa and Liberia, and we're just about to go into Australia and other countries as well. I talk about the incredible team that we're attracting to be able to do that and to be able to get into schools. I'm talking about all of the amazing tools and skills and how it's really affecting the children in a way that's building their self-esteem so that they can really navigate through, the the most stressful of times I think we've ever seen on this planet in a way that's very empowering for them. I talk about how, we're working with teachers and we're helping them to get more excited about what they do and remembering why they became a teacher. And then I'm also talking about all of the amazing allies and champions that we have that's going to help us to support the project as well. So people like the Obamas and the
Mm.
Gateses and different people that we know that could really help to spread this worldwide. So yeah, that's what my issue looks
Mm,
like.
so that's amazing. And when you talked about that you've done some of the most incredible things on this earth, right?
Yeah.
What else do you absolutely want to do on your bucket list?
I want to meditate in the pyramids in Giza in Egypt. The
Oh,
only place
how
I have on my list I haven't been yet. So
really?
yeah.
Okay, so when are you going to go?
I don't know. We're waiting. I'm waiting to see what this COVID situation's happening and, when travel opens up again. But it's, I would like to go next year. That's something I'd
Mm.
like to do.
You know what? We were supposed to go to Africa with the family, all of the kids, and ended up having to postpone it last June, having to postpone it this June. And I was asked the other day, well, when are you going to go? And I said, we're still putting it on the calendar for
Yeah.
next year. We're just going to keep doing it until it finally happens. So I think you need to do that too. Just
Yeah.
put it on there and just go for it. And then, okay, a very important question. What is your favorite beauty product by name?
My foundation. Everyone comments on my foundation.
Well, you look great. I got to tell you, I'm noticing it too. So whatever you're using, we all want to know.
Right. It's called Backstage. It's by Dior. And it has it just has like this really nice matte finish. And then if I'm doing a lot of filming, I have like a Chanel, not Chanel, the powder. I use the powder as well, which kind of really makes me not so glossy. But the foundation is all I have on today, and it
Oh, well, it looks,
it makes your skin look really smooth.
yeah, it looks very good.
Yeah.
Our little secret.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you were to have a dinner party, which is like a novel idea right now, I know, but if you were to have a dinner party tonight, who would be your top invite if you could have anyone in the world?
Michelle Obama.
I knew you were going to say that as soon as you just said her. I thought, okay, it's in her mind right now, and she's so fabulous. I would say that too. So, is there something that you are working on right now that you absolutely want to make sure people know how to get to see you, how to find out where they can learn more? Can you share what you're really most proud of right now and how to get to you?
Yeah. So personalgrowthstudies.com is all about the curriculum. So there's a couple of things that we're looking for right now with that project. Number one, we're looking for schools that are looking to take on a social emotional learning curriculum. so any kind of contacts there. And the other thing is we're also looking to tap into existing, like an existing sales force that already have school connections, that are already selling curriculums, so we can sort of add that to their repertoire, so to speak. That's what we're just about to do in Australia, which is really exciting. So, we're doing that there. And then, for Mind Movies, or the podcast, if you go to mindmovies.com, you can get access to the podcast there. We've got 6, pre-made Mind Movies as well. You've got a list of all of our programs and things there too. It's kind of a one-stop shop, that big website.
Oh, wow. Outstanding. And Natalie, thank you for being on today. I mean, inspiration, and so excited to continue following you, your journey, and to go and create another Mind movie. So thank you again for being on.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Silver Lined Relaunch. If I said something today that resonated with you, will you please head over to iTunes right now and leave us a 5-star review and share this episode with others and help them find the silver linings as well. And don't forget, you can have immediate access to the show notes, any giveaways, and the links to those amazing beauty products at therelaunchco.com/podcast. Until next time, there's always a silver lining, and now is the time to hit the reset button to relaunch those transitions into transformations.